So the next thing we're going to do is work on filling in this circle here with all the different lines. You can do that a couple different ways. So one way would be to divide this circle into 15-degree segments, which is 24. So I could type DI for divide, select the object, enter the number of segments, 24, enter, and then I could just draw a line from the center point to each one. But that's a lot of work, so I'm not going to do it that way. I'll Control Z to undo all that, draw one line, and then I'll polar array it. So if I go up to the top, I'll click on the arrow for array and choose polar array. And if I wanted to type that, I would start typing array polar. I'll select the object that I want to array, right click for enter, and specify the center point. And then I will tell it how many I want. And I want 24 items. So it drew it all for me, which is great. So I can close array. Now I've got 24 items. And we can double check that it's 15 degrees like the instructions say by clicking up at the top for measure and then angle, and I'll just click 2 lines. It won't let me do it because it's a polar array. So I can hit escape, I can double click on my array. Ooh, and it says items 24, angle between 15. That's perfect. I can close out of that. Is you can edit the source and it will edit all of them. So I'll select an item, and remember that you'll have to type array close when you're editing the source object of an array. So I'll hit OK. And then I want to trim, so I'll hit TR. Now see, it won't let me select this line because it's not in the array. So I can hit escape for just a second, draw a circle, C, enter, put its center point to there. Now I've got a circle in it, and I can trim, TR. Select your object, there you go, enter, and then what you want to trim. Right click because it's done, and it's trim them all. And then I want to delete my circle. And then I can leave the array by typing array close. Save changes, yes. So now I've got my lines and I can start changing the line type. Oh, now I have to go back and explode. So close array, explode, select objects, right click for enter, and now I have individual lines. When we're looking at the instructions, we can see that there are different line types. So the first one is a center, and the one across from it is the center, and that looks to be it for the center. So we can go up to a layer and change it to our center line. But we won't want it to be blue, so we'll just make it black for now. Now if you notice, you can't see any dashes, which means that our line type scale needs to be changed so that we can see the dashes. So I can start typing LT scale for line type scale and enter a new scale factor. I'm going to do 0.3, and that's going to change the scale factor for all the lines in the file. And now I'm starting to see my centerline dashes. So the next set, going counterclockwise and down here, are phantom lines, so I can change that. But I don't have a phantom line there, so I can just change it by line type, and I'll choose phantom. And then I'll just continue selecting the lines and changing their line type. A quick way to change line type is by double-clicking on it, and a quick properties comes up, and you can change the line type that way and escape to get out of it. Now I can add a dimension line here like the instructions say. So I will go to choose my dimension style. I'm going to choose annotative. And if I want to check on what that looks like, I can click the button next to it and see how it is. And then I can modify it. So I can do new. And I'll just leave it as copy of annotative. Continue and change it. So I'll go to lines, and I can change the offset and the extend, but I'll leave that. The arrows I'll make a little smaller. I'll make them 1/8. The text I'll make annotative as well, and 1/8. And text placement I want aligned with dimension line. See how that changes it to be in the same orientation as the dimension line. Fit here, you can choose what goes out of the dimension line if there's not enough room, and I've chosen best fit. Primary units we want to be architectural, and precision 1/16 of an inch, and our fraction horizontal. I'll click OK, and then set as current. And I can close out of there. Now I can do my dimension, and you can see if you endpoint to endpoint, and then it wants to know how far you want to drag it off. I'll leave it there. Now I want to edit this because it looks different than the instructions. So exit out to be out of dimension, and click on it, click, and go to properties. I can change it. So I'm going to get rid of the extension lines by choosing off. And that's just because the instructions don't show it. The instructions also say that the line is 2'6", so I can override the text and type 2'6", and now it looks like the instruction. And then the next, going counterclockwise, is a break line. So the next line going counterclockwise is a leader line, so I can type LEA, and it completes to leader. Specify the start point, which is also where your arrow goes, and the end point. And then right-click to say you're done specifying the line. And then right-click again because I don't want to enter text. And I can do none for text. And there, that leader line is done. See in the instructions that the dimension and the leader line rotate, and they're copied in the next quadrant. So first I want to get rid of the line behind the dimension line, so I can delete that. And then I can click on the dimension and my leader line and type mirror and specify the first point of my mirror line. And it just flips. Yes, it's exactly the same. So I can just go to the end point of the circle. And it flipped in the right place. And I can get rid of the line behind my dimension. So it looks great. And then this line and this line are break lines, which are under Express Tools and the break line symbol. And you can specify the size, and I'm going to do S for size, and it's a 1/4 inch, but we're a little cramped, so I'm going to do 1/8 of an inch. And now I'm going to specify the first point for my break line. Click there, and the second point for my break line, and the location for the symbol, and I'll just do the midpoint. There it is. And then I can delete the line behind it, and I can rotate, mirror this as well. MI for mirror, specify the start of my rotation, and delete source object, no, and then I can delete the line behind it. Now I'll be working on this corner here, and an easy way to work on this area without worrying about the other sections is I'm just going to copy these lines and then move them to the side. And I'm actually going to draw over them with a polyline. And a polyline is different from a regular line in that it's all one line. So to show that, I'll type L, enter for a line, and I'll select multiple pieces of the line and enter for done. And then you can see that each section I drew is an individual line, and I can get rid of it individually. If I type PL for polyline, enter, and specify points, and right click to enter, this is one long line. It's not individual segments. So when you're working, it can be a little bit easier to move around and select and work with. So that's what I'm going to do to draw this area. So PL for polyline. And then instead of clicking the end, I'm going to click, look at that. I'm going to do C for close, and it just closes the line for me. So we've got our polyline, and I want to find the center of this area. So I'm going to do the diagonal lines again. Now I'm going to move all of those over. Enter for move, specify the base point, and drag it over. Now that I know the center, I can begin to make the pattern that's shown. And I'll start with drawing a line vertically and horizontally. And I can start at the midpoint and then extend up and go all the way down, enter to complete, and enter again to start again. Start at the midpoint, and I'm just extending over and going across. And I went outside the box because it was fighting me on wanting to go to an O snap. So if you're looking at the instructions in the book, it says that it is a 1/2 inch gap around the center point. It's actually a 1/4 inch gap. So I'm going to offset these lines 1/8 of an inch. So O, enter, specify my offset distance, 1/8, enter, select my object, and if I type M for multiple, I can do this multiple times. I'll specify a point on the right and a point on the left. And then I can click enter to specify my next object, and I'll click the horizontal. And it keeps the same distance as before, so I'll pick on the top and the bottom. And then I can right click to complete and right click again to get out of the command. And now I can start drawing the pattern. And I'm going to do that with a polyline. So PL, and it comes from this point, and it goes over 1 inch, 1, enter, down 1/2 inch, 0.5, over 1/2 inch, down 1/2 inch, over 1/2 inch, down 1/2 inch, and then it goes over to the end. And I can right click again to complete. And then I'll do the bottom of the pattern. So I'll right click again to re-engage polyline. I'll take that same point. It goes down 1/2 inch, 0.5, over 1/2 inch, 0.5, down 1/2 inch, over, down, over, and then down. And right click when you're done. And now I have 2 polylines, and I can join them together to make it easier to move them around. So I've clicked them both. I'll hit J for join, J, enter, and now it is 1 polyline. And I'm going to mirror it above and over. So MI for mirror, and I'll specify the midpoint and then go across. And no to erasing the source object. And so I can click both of these, and MI for mirror, now I've rotated them around. Now on this side you can see that it is crossing the border, so we can trim that off. I will select it and my polygon, and then TR for trim, and select them. And then right click for enter, and I can delete the stragglers. Now I can do these, and they match up with these lines, so I'll draw some guidelines. I'll do a polyline and just follow my guidelines. Now I can get rid of the guidelines. Click on him and I can rotate it around. MI for mirror. Now I have the top and the bottom done, and I can work on the side, which is shaped a little differently, so I'll draw my guidelines again, and this time I'm going to draw my guidelines on the guide layer so that it's a little easier to see. So L, enter, I go across, and I'll go back to my original layer and draw another polyline following my guidelines. And I can click it and mirror it to the other side. Now I can get rid of most of my guidelines. Another way to erase objects outside of a polyline is to type in Xtrim, E-X-T-R, enter. I'll select my polyline and choose the side to trim. So I'll choose outside of it, and everything outside of it goes away. Now I'm going to change the layer on this because they look to be on the scenic thin layer in the instructions. So I'll select them all and move them to scenic thin. And now I can move this back over to our main drawing. I don't need the polyline box, so I'll shift it and select it. And then M for move, select my base point, and go back over. And now it looks like the drawing. That was part B. Now we can go on to part E. So the instructions say that they're all 45-degree lines, and the larger lines are 1/2 inch apart, and it shows me a center point that I can start my lines on. So I'll find the center of this by doing line, enter, and I'll start on this corner, and the other corner, and now I've got my center, and I'm going to do the same thing where I move it over for easier work. So I'm going to draw a polyline, and C for close, and then I can move my lines over to work on them. So now I can start drawing a 45-degree line through the midpoint. And I can see if these two lines are good enough by using the measure again and checking the angle to see if they are 45-degree lines. Ooh, 35. Close, but no cigar. So I'm going to start at the center point, and ortho is on, so it's fighting me. It only wants to go up and down. So I can turn that off and then turn on polar tracking and check that it's set to 45. It is. And now it's going to snap to 45. I've just done anywhere outside of my polyline. and right click to enter it. Now I can extend this line by clicking it and the line I want it to extend to and typing EX, enter, and then selecting the line that I want to extend. So now I have a 45-degree line going this way, and I can right click to get out of extend, and I can offset this line on both sides by taking O, enter, and specifying the distance, and it's a 1/2 inch, 0.5, enter, and I can do this multiple times by entering M, enter, and now I just have to click the side that I want it to offset on. And then I can go back to the other side and right click to complete, and right click again to get out of offset. These lines weren't quite long enough, so I can click them and the polyline and type EX for extend, and then click the line and it will extend out. And right click to complete, and now I can do this line. So I'm going to do L, enter, specify the midpoint, and I'm having a hard time seeing the angle. Oh, there we go. So I just clicked outside and right click to complete, and I'll select this line and the polyline again and type EX for extend and select my line. And now right click to complete. I'll select my line, O for offset, and it's a 1/2 inch. So I'll right click to accept that distance, and then M for multiple, and select the sides I want to extend. And then select the sides I want to offset. And right click to complete, and right click to leave the command. And now I can erase everything outside of the polyline. So that was X trim. And I'll select the side to trim on, and it got rid of them all. And my center marks are confusing me, so I'm going to delete them. Now that we've got our base pattern, we can go in and put in the little lines. And the little lines are thinner than the big lines, so I'm going to change my layer to Scenic Thin. And to do this, I'm going to start in this corner here, and I'm just going to draw a line over. I'm just tracing my line there and then completing, and then I'll click on it and do O for offset, and the space is a 1/2 inch, and there are 4 spaces, so it's an 1/8 of an inch. So I can do 1/8, enter, and M for multiple, enter, and then click the side I want to offset on. I can right click to complete and right click again. That last one didn't take, so I'll just offset it again. Right click, select, and select. Now I'm out of it. Now I can get rid of the line I made and delete it. And now I can do an array to copy these lines all across. So I will click on the 3 lines I want, and I can go up above and choose rectangular array, or type in array rect. But I'm already up here, so I'll click rectangular. And it automatically puts some in, but you'll notice that it's not at the right spacing. So we can count how many we need. So we can count how many columns we need. There are 7 columns, so I'll change that to 7. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. Change that to 5. We're going to deselect associative this time. That way we can edit it more easily. And then the spacing isn't perfect, so we are going to type S, enter for spacing. And now I can specify the distance between columns. Now it lined the columns up perfectly, and I can specify the distance between rows. And it lined them up perfectly. I can do X for exit. And now we can trim everything outside of the polyline by doing X trim, selecting our polyline, and specifying the side we want to trim on. And then we can delete. Then I can go back in and fill in these guys. Probably should have done that first, but that's okay. CO for copy, then my base point, then I can also do it above with a different base point. Right click to complete, and while I'm there I see that this line isn't extended out, so I can click on it in the box and do extend to get it to go across the box. And now I can trim those guys again with X trim. Now I have that pattern complete and I can move it back over. Then I'll shift select to remove from the selection our boxes. M for move. Specify the base point. Interesting, not quite perfect. Let's try that again. There we go. It looks like the first time I might have selected this line as the base point instead of the corner of the box. Now I can move on to this corner. Do the same thing. I'll trace this area and then work on it to the side. PL for P line. And C for close. So I've completed my polyline and I want to know the center of this area again. So L for line. I'm just doing the diagonals again. Now I'll move that across. And I can start doing my hexagons. And the instructions show that the lines are 60 degrees and the hexagons are 1 inch apart. And there is a meeting point at this center. There are a few ways we could complete this pattern. If we were hand drafting, we'd start at the center point and draw lines at 60 degrees. And then draw a vertical line up and extend all three. And then I could copy these over. Going a little faster now because I'm hoping that you're more familiar with the commands. And then this is the area where my polygon would be. And I can find the midpoint L. And I could draw a circle with a 1/2 inch radius. And then it's showing me the beginning of my polygon. So I could draw a line from the intersection to the intersection. And now I've got a polygon. And then I'll just trace over it with a P line. And there is our hexagon. And then we could just repeat that process over and over again. But life is a little easier for us in drafting. So I'm going to delete all of that, keep my center point. Then I can go up above to the corner and choose polygon. And my number of sides is 6. And the center is there. And then I want inscribe, so I'll type I and specify the radius. And now I've got the same thing, a beautiful polygon, which I can repeat across. If I look at the instructions, I can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. So I can do a rectangular array and start typing array. Select my object, select rectangular, and then I can change my columns to 5 and 5. I don't want associative. That means if you edit one, you edit them all. And I can choose my spacing by typing S, enter. Specify the distance. I want them right next to each other. And I'll do the same thing for the rows. And now they're all touching. But I want 5 rows. Somehow I typed 3. Now I can close the array. Select them all. I'm shift selecting to get rid of the things I don't want. And then I know that the 1, 2, third over and third up is the center. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And that point is the center when I look at the instructions. So I'm going to do M, enter for move. My base point is right there. And I'll go, there we go. I counted wrong. Oopsie. So I can just copy these guys over. CO for copy. And complete, and I can do the trim again. I can trim everything outside of it by typing EX for X trim and selecting X trim and specifying the side I want to trim on. And now I can delete these guys out and move this back over. If you type MO, you bring up the properties. I've been doing that a lot lately. M, enter. And I can delete my guidelines. It's a great time to save and take a break.